So just a bit of an introduction. So my name's Helen Carter. Some of you know me. I know there's some familiar faces in the room. I'm a project development coordinator for NEA. I've been for nearly 3 years now. So yeah, hopefully, like I said, I've spoken to some of you before. So just thought it'd be useful to give an update on what I've been up to as a project development coordinator here in the East Midlands. So obviously life is very different for us, as I'm sure it is for all of you guys as well during this strange situation that we're in. So we've had to adjust how we work. Most of our day-to-day service now is supporting people through our Warm and Safe Homes referral service. You may have heard of it. It's now a centralised point so that agencies and individuals can refer directly through our website or contact us directly. It's been a fantastic hub rather than sort of calling agents individually. There's a central referral point now. So most of the work that we've been doing has been through that. Obviously we haven't been able to go out and about as we would usually do and do face-to-face support with people or do any talks or sessions, which has been a very strange state of affairs because not being able to talk to people directly, I think, has been tricky. So most of our support now is done over the phone. I know there have been some virtual sessions as well. Some of the project officers have now started doing workshops and groups via Zoom. So we do have that flexibility now as well. If you have any groups or anything that would be interested in doing that, then we can offer that. We are also working through our Warm Home Discount funded projects, which enables us to offer that level of support to people. Obviously, our work in practice, our targets are going to be slightly different, not being able to deliver sessions as it stands at the moment, so we are reviewing that. But the support that we're able to offer people, everything to do with energy efficiency, anything to do with fuel there, anything that they need help with, we can do through that project. We currently have a crisis fund, so we're able to do emergency top-up vouchers for people, which is, as you can understand at the moment, has rocketed. So that has been incredibly popular. We're coming close to the end of that funding pot, but hoping that we're going to have future funding for that as well. So that is emergency vouchers for people on prepayment meters, which for a lot of people have been a godsend. So many people are on furlough or have been made unemployed by this situation. So that is providing essential help for people. We've also had a debt relief pot, which, as you can imagine, has disappeared very quickly. And we're hoping to have a measures pot as well coming in through our Warm Home Discount funded projects. So hopefully we'll be able to offer support with things like new boilers, insulation, all sorts of measures. So that's something that hopefully we can update you on at the next forum. We've also been working with Cadent under our reactive response programme. I don't think Nikki's on the call, is she?
Yes, I am. I'm here.
How are you? Oh, I didn't realise you were there. Do you want to give a quick update on reactive response and what we've been doing with that?
Yeah, sure. So as Helen says, we've been working in partnership with Cadent. This is a programme that started as a pilot in the West Midlands and is now rolled out across the whole of the Cadent network area. So what it involves is basically, in a nutshell, when an emergency Cadent engineer is called out to a property because of a gas-related emergency, so either a gas leak or a carbon monoxide alarm has been activated, their job is really just to make the property safe, which in most cases requires them to disconnect the gas supply. So, and then they need to move on to the next emergency. But obviously what that effectively does for fuel poor householders is take them out of the frying pan and put them into the fire, because they have gone from a situation which is dangerous in the sense that there's gas leaking to a situation that's dangerous in the sense that they don't have any gas supply, so they can't heat the property or cook. So what this reactive response programme does is that if the engineer has concerns about the vulnerability of the client at the point that they turn off their gas supply, they refer through to NEA, and NEA is in a position currently to send another engineer out, another gas safe engineer, to survey the property, find out exactly what the problem is, where the gas leak is, or where the carbon monoxide is coming from. And then we can replace, either repair or replace the appliance or the pipework, and free of charge to the customer, and put them back on gas supply, basically. So the programme includes anything from replacing a small section of pipe that has got a hole in it, all the way through to new boilers, new cookers, new gas fires, in some cases brand new central heating systems for the first time. So it's a fantastic project to be involved with, because obviously it can make life-changing difference to somebody's life. So we're really pleased to be able to offer that service, and it's great to be working with Cadent on doing that. So yeah, that's it, reactive response in a nutshell. I could probably talk about it for a long time, because it's something that's that I'm involved with a lot, and it's the impact of it is just phenomenal. But I won't take up any more forum time. But yeah, that's reactive response. Thanks, Helen.
Yep, no problem. Were there any other updates that you wanted to do while we've got you on, in case you get pulled off somewhere?
No, I think you've covered everything, but I'll pipe up if I think of anything.
Okay, no problem. So we will move on to our first update then, our NEA policy update from Matt Copeland. Unfortunately, Matt isn't able to be with us today. So if you do have any questions about policy, you can certainly try and ask me and Nikki. I don't know whether we'll be able to answer, but we'll do our best. If not, then we'll share Matt's email address, so feel free to obviously contact him directly. I think he's on, I might be wrong, is he on paternity leave? I think he's off anyway. So yeah, so Brian, if we could do the policy update.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the NEA Summer Forum 2020 Policy Update. Today I'm going to take you through some policy developments that have happened recently. Before I get to that, you might be wondering how our work is being shaped by the pandemic, as COVID-19 has had such a profound impact on all of our lives, but also the policy landscape. We've outlined the impact in our recent webinar, which you can watch there, which also has input from Citizens Advice and Bayes and Energy UK. If you haven't seen it, it's well worth a watch, so I'd encourage you to click through. Okay, on to the policy update and some recent highlights. So we're going to talk today about our campaign for a green economic recovery, our work surrounding the impacts of COVID-19, our campaign for the warm home discount to be extended, some news on the prepayment cap and updates on off-change work on South Disconnection, and then a little bit on water poverty at the end. So firstly, the most exciting bit, our campaign for a green economic recovery. We joined with many other organisations in calling for the economic recovery package to be a green one, centred around support for energy efficiency. And our role there was really not just from energy efficiency, but to ensure that there was a focus on low-income, fuel-poor households in any economic recovery. Dozens of organisations have released reports, written to government, briefed the press, all sorts of public affairs-y type things to encourage such a scheme that creates thousands of jobs, reduces fuel poverty, tackles health inequalities, tackles regional inequalities, everything that government is looking for. We helped contribute to several of those. Many of you may have been involved in letters or reports and mounted quite a lot of pressure on Downing Street over the past month or so. The result of that is success. The government has announced a Green Home Grant Scheme, and whilst we don't know too much about that at the moment, I've just bulleted there what we do know. So there'll be £2 billion overall for that scheme. And that scheme comes in the form of voucher grants. So for low-income households, there will be vouchers up to £10,000 at no cost to the householder. For other households, it'll be £5,000, with the government contributing £2 for every £1 the householder puts in. We expect half of the money to go towards the low-income side of things. That was suggested by the business secretary. Haven't had that confirmed as of yet. but we think that is a pretty good base assumption at the moment. This is a huge success for NEA. We're incredibly proud of it. We're especially proud of the fact that the grants will come at no cost to the householder if they are classed as low income. That is something that we've heavily campaigned for, and we believe we moved the dial quite significantly on that particular point. I'd love to talk about this all day and sort of celebrate with you, but there's lots to get through and not enough time, so I'm going to have to move on. But yeah, this is certainly the biggest success we've had since I joined NEA. Something else that we've been doing over the past few months, and you may have seen our work on this, is looking at the impact of COVID-19 and how households have been affected by it. We've released 2 papers looking at the impacts, one on addressing the impacts of the social distancing on energy consumers, where we looked at things like what support was available, what support being accessed and able to, was it accessible, and then proposed some remedies for it. We then released a paper looking at debt during COVID-19 called The Gathering Storm, and that looked at the scale of the mounting debt in the energy sector, but also the water sector as well, and included some proposals to firstly help households to ensure that they can pay the debt with sort of debt matching or payment matching schemes, but secondly make paying easier in terms of ensuring that suppliers weren't unfairly chasing debt. Additionally, we're running this year's fuel poverty monitor on the impacts of COVID-19 on fuel poor households. That's been collecting information from our staff, from many of you, through our call for evidence, and also through other stakeholders such as Westminster and the devolved governments, through interviews, and that will report back later this year in approximately September with some initial findings. Of course, it can only be very initial because it's very early, relatively speaking, and we'll continue to try and capture evidence on this, but we think it will be really apt to understand some deficiencies, some things that went well in the first lockdown, so ahead of a potential second lockdown, we know what could be done better. Onto all home discount. So throughout the last 6 months, you'd have heard me rabbiting along about this many times, I guess, but we've been campaigning for the warm home discount to be extended and expanded. So we've partnered up with this fabulous organisation called Fair by Design, and we released a report with them outlining the need for extending and expanding the warm home discount. And many of you would have been involved in this campaign. We wrote to the Minister along with 60 other signatories, asking for clarity on the immediate future of the scheme, but also some clarity on their plans with looking into the future. We think that a 1-year extension at this point would be apt, keeping the scheme as it is, but also that the government need to consider the longer term design of the scheme to make sure that more people can receive payments automatically, as opposed to the application procedure that happens at the moment, where it's a bit of a lottery. We've also engaged more broadly with Parliament, encouraging Conservative MPs to put pressure on BEIS to provide urgent clarity, and we've also asked and succeeded in getting the relevant minister in Wales, the Welsh Government, to write to Westminster as well. So quite a lot of stuff going on here, and we're relatively confident we'll get this. It's just about maintaining that pressure. Next, Ofgem's work, and there's been 2 main bits of work as far as we're concerned over the past few months. Firstly, the continuation of the prepayment price cap. It's almost certain that this will now continue after the end of this year, when the current cap is due to end. So, as you may remember, the current prepayment price cap is distinct from the broader cap. It's one that the CMA brought in when they did their energy market investigation because of detriment specifically to prepayment customers. So we've argued that cap is very different to the default tariff price cap, and should be sort of kept separate, but Ofgem have decided that it will roll it into it, mainly to ensure that the costs of continuing price caps aren't exceeding the benefits. Broadly, this is good. We would have preferred them to be separate, but this still provides protection for prepayment customers, and it means that 4 million households who do have a prepayment meter and are on standard variable tariffs will continue to receive price protection for the foreseeable future, and won't see big increases in their prices coming out of winter. Additionally to that, Ofgem have released their final consultations on proposals to help households that self-disconnect. Suppliers, if they follow through with the proposals in that consultation, which we expect them to, suppliers will have to monitor self-disconnection, so they'll have to understand which of their customers are self-disconnecting. All suppliers will have to offer emergency and friendly credit. Most do at the moment, all do, and all have to use ability to pay principles. All of this will be in licence conditions, so will therefore be enforceable. And we think that whilst this is stretching for suppliers, this isn't an easy task for them to do. Specifically, the monitoring side of things will be difficult for them to do. This is really welcome, and not only is it good for those customers who are on legacy prepay, because it offers them greater level of protection, but also because this is difficult and expensive for suppliers to do, they will be encouraged financially to ensure that prepayment customers are prioritised in terms of getting smart meters, which is a good thing. The benefits of having a smart meter are much higher for prepayment customers than others. So overall, these are fantastic proposals and we can get right behind them. Lastly, a bit of stuff on our water poverty work. My colleague Jess has published a new report on the consistency of social tariffs in the water sector, and there's 3 recommendations in that report. One, that government should conduct a thorough review of social tariff guidance in consultation with water companies and stakeholders to make this report fairer for all. Secondly, there should be particular consideration given to alternative options for funding social tariff schemes. At the moment, it's a sort of cross subsidy where some of their customers pay for others to receive a lower tariff. We think there should be different ways of doing that, or considered at least. And then thirdly, government should prescribe some core eligibility criteria, so there's more consistency across different water companies of who receives this level of support, because at the moment it's a bit of a postcode lottery. Yeah, so that's that water report. And lastly, this is what's coming up in the next few months. So firstly, we have an expected response from the government to the fuel poverty strategy, and we're pushing for that to be coming sooner rather than later. Secondly, as we talked about before, we're pushing for the consultation on all home discounts, and that should be quite linked to the timing of the fuel poverty strategy because the two are so inherently linked. And then hopefully before the end of the year, we think it's autumn, but that's always a bit optimistic. The government's published a broader, longer-term heat and building strategy, which we hope will look at not only how to increase the energy efficiency of fuel poor and other homes, but also how those homes are heated, decarbonising the heating systems. That's everything from me. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope to see you all soon.
I'm sure you can appreciate how much work our policy and research team have been doing, and it does seem that things are moving in the right direction. There's lots of positive stuff happening in government at the moment, which is fantastic, even when they've got other things to distract them. We're moving in the right direction. So some really interesting stuff there. So does anybody have any questions? Just feel to, I don't know if you know, but there's a little reaction button at the bottom of your screen, so you can give me a little wave or a thumbs up if you've got any questions. No? No? Fantastic. Like I said, if you do have anything in particular that you want to ask around any of those policy updates, then please feel free to get in touch with Matt. We can share his email around with you. I'm sure he won't mind you asking him questions. So yeah, if there's no questions, we'll hop on to the next update, which is from my colleague Jamie Lee on our Connecting Homes for Health report. She's fed back on that for us, so we can look at that.
Hi everyone, I'm Jamie Lee Rosenborough, Senior Research and Policy Officer at NEA, and I'm here today to highlight some of the impacts achieved and lessons learned as a result of our Connecting Homes for Health pilot research project. Before I go any further, I'd like to share Steve's story with you. Steve is a disabled war veteran. He suffers from PTSD. He lives along with his dog, Baxter, whom he considers to be his closest friend in the world. Steve had to leave his job due to ill health. His income was drastically reduced and he had fallen into arrears with his mortgage payments. He was in dispute with the Ministry of Defence over the calculation of his war pension and he was living on universal credit. He had one inefficient storage heater in the living room and 2 portable electric heaters. He could not afford to pay his energy bills. He generally found himself sitting in the dark and cold at home. He would wear a pair of leather gloves to try and keep his hands warm, but that wasn't enough to prevent the pain creeping into his joints and causing him great discomfort. But he preferred to suffer the pain in his hands than to risk falling further into fuel debt. At one point, his universal credit payments were temporarily stopped. For days, he did not eat, but drank only water. Steve felt incredibly ashamed of the circumstances in which he found himself, and had progressively cut off contact with friends and family as a result. He did not want them to see him struggling and was too proud to stomach the thought of their pity or their offers of help. Feeling cold, hungry and isolated made it harder for him to cope with the symptoms of his PTSD. The only person he ever really saw was his dad, who was suffering from a terminal illness and lived nearby. 1 year after participating in the Connecting Homes for Health scheme, Steve is transformed. He has an efficient and fully working heating and hot water system and knows that he can stay warm when he needs it. Despite using his heating system more, his energy costs have reduced so much that he is now able to save money each month. He even has £500 in his savings account. He can afford to buy the food he wants and not just the bare minimum. He has even had help in securing a manageable repayment plan with his energy supplier and is gradually clearing the fuel debt that he had accrued before signing up to the scheme. His leather gloves are no longer needed when he's at home. His hands do not hurt anymore, and he can take regular hot baths to further help manage his joint pain. He feels financially independent and happy. Because he no longer feels hungry and cold, he feels as though he is in a better place mentally to be able to deal with the symptoms of his PTSD. His voice now sounds bright and upbeat, whereas before he sounded sad and forlorn and was prone to tears. He says that letting the NEA advisor into his home that day was the best thing that he has ever done. The scheme, he says, has transformed his life. It has given him health and financial independence and given him hope once again. The Connecting Homes for Health pilot research project aimed to test and measure the impact of applying health-based eligibility criteria to the provision of free gas grid connections funded through the Fuel Poor Network Extension Scheme and free first-time gas central heating measures alongside tailored energy efficiency advice and support funded through Warm Home Discount industry initiatives on the health and well-being of vulnerable residents who are in or at risk of fuel poverty and at risk from cold-related ill health. The research element of the project was funded by Northern Gas Networks. The concept of proportionate universalism put forward by Michael Marmot argues that actions to tackle health inequalities need to be proportionate to the level of disadvantage experienced by different groups in society, i.e., the most vulnerable will need additional support. A mapping exercise was therefore designed and carried out for County Durham and Sunderland. This involved identifying GP practices within the 2 local authority areas that were showing a high prevalence of multiple cold-related ill health indicators according to the Quality Outcomes Framework, using a weighted ranking system. These were then overlapped with the Index of Multiple Deprivation rank, along with additional deprivation indicators and fuel poverty prevalence at ward level in order to give each GP practice catchment area an overall health, deprivation, fuel poverty risk score. Postcodes falling within a 2-mile radius of each of the highest scoring practices were identified and given to NGN, who carried out an additional layer of mapping to identify which properties were off gas. A comprehensive desk-based evidence review was carried out to understand the relationship between cold homes and ill health and to inform development of the eligibility criteria for the scheme. The full review can be accessed on our website. The pilot needed to balance narrow eligibility requirements to capture the most vulnerable, whilst allowing for some flexibility to capture other households in need. So I'd now like to touch on some of the impacts that were achieved for households, starting with the impact on their home heating and control experiences. Before receiving support, 76% of participants were not satisfied with the temperature in their home. 1 year after, 100% were satisfied or very satisfied. Before, 59% were not satisfied with how easy their heating system was to use. Within a year, 100% were satisfied or very satisfied. 74% were not satisfied with the amount of control they had over their heating before receiving support, but again, 100% were either satisfied or very satisfied afterwards. While 64% were not satisfied with how well their house kept the heat in pre-intervention, post-intervention, 86% were satisfied. The experience of subjective fuel poverty was also significantly reduced amongst participants. Before receiving support, 93% of households were in subjective fuel poverty. Within a year, this had reduced to 5%, meaning that 95% of participating households were not in subjective fuel poverty after receiving support. 1 year on, 100% of participants said they were satisfied with the new gas central heating system. It was also now easier for 90% and cheaper for 68% to heat enough hot water for their needs, and 35% use more hot water than they did before. 91% of those who had solid fuel systems before said that heating water in the summer no longer made their homes too hot. The experience of Carolyn and Lynette highlights the importance of having access to affordable and reliable hot water. Carolyn lives with her teenage daughter, Lynette. Carolyn is partially sighted and suffers from multiple health conditions. She's also the primary carer for Lynette, who has chronic bronchitis and asthma and who suffers from chronic skin and joint conditions. The pair live in a private rented, semi-detached home. Before, the heating system did not work and would constantly trip out the electricity. It was extremely inefficient and costly to run. Nevertheless, she had to have it turned on all the time to make sure the house could be warm enough for Lynette. As a result, she was falling deeper and deeper into fuel debt. The immersion heater did not work well, and Carolyn struggled to fill a bath with hot water at any one time. When she did want hot water, she had to wait for up to 2 hours. This made it practically impossible for Lynette to use hot water to manage her joint and skin conditions in the way that she needed. When they wanted to bathe, they had to go to her grandmother or her aunt's home instead. When things got really bad, Carolyn would borrow money from her sister to cover the cost of her energy bill. The home that Carolyn had envisioned became in her mind an unsanitary place which represented danger, discomfort and a risk to her own health and that of her daughter. 1 year on, and Carolyn and Lynette now have access to a working central heating system which provides them with as much heating and hot water as they need without having to worry about the cost. Their energy is cheaper and they have succeeded in having some of their outstanding fuel debt written off. Lynette is able to have as many hot baths as her condition requires, and her respiratory symptoms are less severe when she is warm at home. Carolyn is now pleased that she doesn't have to worry about keeping the whole house warm all day. She feels relieved that Lynette now has access to a comfortable environment in which she can be homeschooled without risking a worsening of her respiratory illness. They've been able to decorate and take pride in the beautiful home which they've been able to create. Carolyn has told her landlord that, should they decide to sell the property, she'd be keen to have first refusal. This is the place where she wants to live and where she wants to stay. It is her home. Indeed, the project either made energy bills more affordable or did not increase bills for a large proportion of participant households. Before, for example, 70% had found it hard to afford their energy bills. After, 79% found it easy. Before, 35% felt that their energy bills were manageable, but this increased to 77% afterwards. Similarly, whereas before only 34% felt their household budget was manageable, afterwards 67% felt so. The intervention also had an impact on the self-reported physical and mental health and well-being of participant households. For example, before intervention, 14% rated their physical health as either good or very good. Afterwards, 74% did so. Before, 37% rated mental health as good or very good. Afterwards, 79% did so. Before, 83% said their physical health was affected by being called at home. Afterwards, only 7% felt that this was the case. Similarly, before, 48% had said that their mental health was affected by being called at home. Afterwards, only 5% felt so. And finally, whereas before intervention, 73% said that their ability to cope with an existing illness was affected by being called at home, only 5% said that this was the case afterwards. Let's take a look at May's story. May is retired and suffers from COPD. At the point at which she signed up for the scheme, her lung capacity was at 39% and she would be constantly wheezing and struggling for breath. May previously had a solid fuel heating system in her home, which she hated. It was difficult to manage and she struggled to fetch the fuel she needed from the outside store due to her breathing. She was convinced that the ash and the dust created by the system was contributing to her respiratory illness and helping to make her symptoms worse. Not only that, but it made her reluctant to have her young grandchildren over to visit. She worried that 2 toddlers running around the living room were in danger of suffering serious burns and injuries should they fall over near or get too close to the fire that was in the middle of the room. 1 year after, and her gas central heating system has been installed, and May was saving between £80 and £90 a month on her fuel bills. Not only did this mean that she could now afford to buy more food and other essentials, but also that she could allow herself a little treat every now and then. She was finally able to put money into her savings account each month, which made her feel content and secure. Her lung capacity had increased over the period of a year from 39% to 50%. When her doctor expressed surprise and pleasure at the improvement and asked her if anything had changed, she said that she told him that it had been down to her new gas central heating system. She said that she was warmer and that the system was much cleaner, and she no longer felt that she was breathing in harmful substances while she was at home. She did not have to struggle to bring fuel in anymore and could instead just enjoy the warmth and the financial savings. Her children had noticed that her chest no longer made a constant rattling noise and that her pallor had improved. She no longer looked grey. Furthermore, she'd been able to spend more time with her young grandchildren as she was now confident that they would not hurt themselves when playing in her living room. Instead of worrying about the dangers that her home might represent, she could simply enjoy being with her family. May felt as though the scheme had changed her life for the better and likened it to having won the lottery. Taken together, these results show that the application of the health-based and financial eligibility criteria and targeting mechanisms to the project was successfully able to reduce the experience of health and other social inequalities in extremely vulnerable households. However, the delivery pathways developed and enacted during the delivery phase of the project were also key in enabling such results to be achieved. Ultimately, preliminary mapping is important to identify target communities or areas, but that should be the start and not the end point of a successful recruitment strategy, especially when it comes to engaging and retaining the participation of extremely vulnerable clients. The reality is much more complex and much more expensive to deliver. In the case of this project, it meant repeated letters, phone calls, text messages, face-to-face home visits, door knocking, private and social landlord liaison. It also meant managing communications with local councils and parish councils and taking on board the processing of FPNES paperwork. Not only that, it meant organising and carrying out house clearances and storage space, coordinating the provision of small measures such as carpets and curtains, identifying and booking adequate interpretation services, and making onward referrals to other agencies able to provide additional support for multiple vulnerabilities. Ultimately, it's about fully understanding individual household situations and needs. At times, the application of a small crisis fund meant that the project was able to retain the participation of households who would have otherwise fallen by the wayside. Importantly, the retention of such households was achieved by spending relatively small amounts of money. The key factor was in staff taking the time to understand the barriers facing each individual household and creatively seeking out ways that would remove that barrier. The extra time and effort spent in recruiting and retaining the participation of vulnerable, hard-to-reach households was also necessary when securing gas connections for hard-to-connect properties, especially where legal complications can arise when having to seek permission to work on private land, for example. Challenges were encountered with regards to identifying whether a household had a meter point reference number, or MPRN, as well as in securing a timely gas meter installation. In this instance, for example, a company called Citrus Energy was identified who, as part of their energy advice and switching service, are able to secure first-time gas meter installations by comparing deals and installation timeframes between different suppliers. This secured a turnaround time of 10 days instead of 3 months to get gas meters fitted. The team were furthermore enabled to identify official minimum energy efficiency installation quality standards, and so produced an installation checklist that installers had to use to ensure works were carried out to the highest of standards, with appropriate quality assurance checks and visits then being carried out. It was also important to work with installers who understood or were able to be flexible in relation to the vulnerabilities of households. Our report sets out a number of both practical and policy-based recommendations to facilitate and enable the replication of the delivery pathways identified during the Connecting Homes for Health pilot scheme. Details of all the recommendations that we are making can be found in both the full report and executive summary. So that brings me to the end of a somewhat whirlwind tour of the project. If you're interested in finding out more, please visit the project page on NEA's website. You can also email NEA's research or policy manager using the addresses shown on screen. Thank you very much.
Well, fantastic update there from Jamie. It never ceases to shock me, some of the situation that people find themselves in. And it's amazing to have had a project like that that's had such significant impact on people's lives. I'm sure you've all dealt with people in situations similar to that. To have such a significant impact on their physical health and their mental well-being as well. I'm sure you'd all agree that that's a huge project and fantastic outcomes. It also shows the importance of partnership working as well. I'm sure we've all tried to engage with people before and struggle to keep them on board when you're trying to support them. It just shows how important that coordination and that determination to offer them as much support as possible to get the right result. Does anybody have any questions about that? Unfortunately, we don't have Jamie with us, but if anybody has any sort of questions off the top of their head that they'd like to ask, we might be able to answer them. If not, then feel free, like I said, to contact our research team. We'll share the slides after this session as well, because there is a lot of information in there that I'm sure you'd like to go away and look at and digest. There are links in the presentation as well to the report and to further information. So hopefully you found that useful. What I'll do then, if everybody's ready, I will hand over to Mark from Nottingham Energy Partnership, who's going to give us an update on the Warm Homes Hub in Nottingham. If you're ready to go, Mark.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming. Thanks for having me. Helen, it's lovely to get an invite. I'm just going to share my screen quickly, which worked before, so I'm sure it'll work again with no problems whatsoever. So everyone should hopefully be able to see my screen in a second. Is that working? Oh, can everyone see me? Can you see the screen?
Yeah,
we can see it.
Lovely, lovely. So I'm not going to be talking sort of like in-depth numbers or anything, but I'm going to give a quick overview of the scheme itself and sort of how we're aiming to help people. And obviously at the end, if you want to ask questions about anything in particular, feel free, there'll be time for that as well. So I'm going to quickly do a whistle-stop tour of the Warm Homes Hub and what it is, who's running it, and what we hope to achieve with it. So without further ado, in summary, it's a program to try and provide warmth and comfort for a number of households, vulnerable households throughout Nottinghamshire and Nottingham City from March this year right through to 2022. And you can see the numbers there as well. And so that help comprises, practical energy saving solutions, advice, financial support, those sorts of things. And the aim is to address these key strategic housing, health and environmental issues. So we're looking at, obviously, fuel poverty is a big one, because we're a fuel poverty charity for a start. Excess winter deaths, poor housing, and then with a overarching ambition to help reduce carbon emissions as well, in line with sort of the local and national net zero targets and things like that. So the organisations involved in the project. So we've got ourselves at Nottingham Energy Partnership, who, as I said, so we're an independent charity. We're running for about 20 years now, and our goal has always been to tackle fuel poverty and offer these affordable, warm solutions to households throughout Nottinghamshire. And so we're working with Age UK as well on the project, and E.ON, to deliver some of these services. And we're also being supported by the county and city councils as well, which is great. And it's also funded in total by the Warm Homes Fund, or funded in parts by the Warm Homes Fund. So there's a lot of potential. And so in terms of the sort of support that we'll be offering, and we offer through the scheme, it's running now, we've got two sort of main client pathways. And now they're not mutually exclusive. They can help in a number of ways. But we've got what's called Category 1 support and Category 3 support. So Category 1 comprises the primary measures, which are more related to practical interventions, things like heating and insulation, which I'll go through in a bit anyway. And then we've got the Category 3 measures, secondary measures, which are the sort of more holistic and the wider ranging support available. And again, I'll tell you a bit more about that in more detail in a minute. So in terms of Category 1 support, then what does that actually mean? So the hook, as it were, is being able to provide people with first-time gas central heating. That's the main aim of the project. But also on top of that, we'll also be looking to offer free and subsidised boiler repairs and straight-out replacements, in addition to things like boiler health checks, and so just generally heating-related issues. As a side to that, we're also looking to target properties that are off the gas grid, so trying to help people get free gas connections to their properties if they were previously not on gas central heating. And then in tandem with that, we're also looking at people's insulation, so their home insulation, particularly cavity wall and loft insulation. Now, as probably many people here know, there's not a lot of funding out there for solid wall insulation, so this project doesn't cover that type of insulation at the moment. With what we've heard earlier about the Green Homes grant, so that may change in the future, but the scope of this project, solid wall is not a part of that. In terms of what might make someone eligible for this central heating, so the Category 1 support, I don't want you to dwell too much on the numbers here for now, but the overall impression I want to take from this is that we will be helping people that already qualify for, say, the existing ECO3 scheme, the ECO scheme, the energy company obligation related heating interventions. So anyone who has qualifying benefits for that scheme would be eligible for the Warm Homes Hub, in addition to those on child benefits with a certain income, with a certain number of children. And then also on top of that, we're also engaging with the local authorities to offer a flexible eligibility criteria, and this can broadly be broken down into household income thresholds. And again, the table sort of goes over those thresholds we might expect to be helping people with if they meet those criteria. And then as a side note, we're also trying to offer help to social tenants, with EPCs of ratings E, F, and G. That's a bit more tricky. So predominantly, we're looking at those eco benefits households and the low income households. So to qualify then for the heating, we were looking for people who already have old inefficient electric storage heaters or old electric panel heaters that aren't sort of fit for purpose, or anyone who's relying on sort of just a gas fire or coal fire as their main heating source, and particularly anyone who doesn't have central heating. Now we define that as anyone who doesn't have any radiators in their property, that's no central heating. So that's what some of the main selective criteria for eligibility for this part of the scheme, for the Category 1 support. So looking then at Category 3 support, we've got quite a few different sort of support packages here and interventions we can take. So we've got things like income maximisation. So they're this sort of more common discount schemes. So we've got warm homes discount, which has been touched on already. We've got things like the 7 trend big difference. So that's the water bill discounts. We've got things like sending referrals through to Age UK for benefit checks, and also debt advice and the fuel vouchers. I think are probably the same thing that was mentioned earlier with the emergency credit that you can apply for on a prepayment meter. So helping people with all those sorts of support services. And then on top of that, we'll also be offering energy tariff switching advice as well, and running through those with clients on the phone, and also in addition looking at other health and wellbeing measures. So we've got things like referrals to the PSR service. So that's the priority service register. That's the register that the distribution network operators and obviously energy suppliers as well have, which supports vulnerable people in the event of a power cut. So we help people get signed onto that, and we also look at helping people get referrals to food banks and similar sort of services. So I'll put an asterisk here. So we're also, as part of this project, we're broadening the reach of our home visits, but obviously that hasn't been quite so possible during COVID. That has limited, was completely wiped out a number of home visits we can do, at least in the initial stages of the pandemic. But when these do resume again, we offered them in the past, and we'll be offering more in the future as well as part of the project. And that's home visits to go and talk to people about their energy usage, about the changing their behaviour, and generally being able to heat their home healthily and more affordably, and offering information to support that, along with those secondary measures that maybe people weren't, if they're particularly vulnerable, they couldn't come call us or come to the office, and so it's that service that we can also offer category 3 support in the household as well. On top of that, because of COVID, we've had to adapt our operations a little bit, and I'm back in the office now, but we weren't for a long time, and we were obviously working a lot remotely. And so we have seen a shift in the sort of inquiries we're getting as well. So we've been getting a lot more inquiries about help with debts and things like that, because of the pressure on people's finances when they're in lockdown, those increased energy bills, that sort of thing. But we're helping in that front anyway, but also trying to expand our services to help with things like getting vulnerable people signed up to the food parcel service, helping refer through for prescription collections and other sort of well-being measures that might relate to COVID as well. So then, in terms of who are we broadly targeting, so I've talked about the eligibility criteria for, say, the category 1. Broadly, the project is I say targeting. That sounds a bit strange, but broadly, we're looking to help the vulnerable households, so also people aged over 60, those families with young children, those people with chronic health issues, particularly, and if they're living in fuel poverty. That's one of the main aims of the project, and also if they're off gas or might require gas central heating because they're relying on another inefficient or quite expensive heating system that isn't gas central heating. And then, as I said earlier, alluded to, we're helping homeowners and private and social tenants to different degrees. With the private tenants, we assess their eligibility for the scheme, and then it's going to be a £500 contribution from the landlord if they agree, and then we can help them get the measures installed for free as part of the project. And with the social tenants, this ties in with the next point, which is to do with community schemes. So we're broadly looking to help social tenants because housing associations have their own targets and obligations in terms of energy efficiency of their homes, but broadly speaking, we can look to offer social tenants and any streets that don't have access to gas connections. We can offer a community scheme where we look to sign up, say, half of the street, and if 50% of the street signs up for the scheme, then it makes it financially viable for Cadent to come out and extend the network. And so, sort of promoting that extension of the network, if we can find the sort of uptake in local communities. So we're trying to offer it out to as many people as we can, either category 1 or category 3 support, really. So in terms of the referrals process, it's actually quite simple, but there's a website, which I will show you at the end, but it's thewarmhomeshub.com, and there's a phone number as well. So anyone can just visit the website or call the number and refer themselves for help. Also, we can work with other organisations to generate those referrals, and we'll do a similar thing. And then anyone who comes through to us will get a full assessment, a wellbeing assessment, a home assessment. We'll identify any ways that we can help. and whether they're sort of eligible to go through to E.ON for sort of pre-qualification surveys and things like that. So then once the assessment's been completed, we will, if eligible, refer that person to E.ON, who will complete a more in-depth survey and talk about they will discuss the options out there for that household, and what sort of improvements they could have carried out. And then E.ON will work with Cadent to connect the gas if needed, and also work with their own contractors to install the first and central heating or boiler replacement, whatever it may be, or insulation. And then around that and following on from that, at NEP, we'll also be providing the aftercare and any other category 3 support that the client may be eligible for. So trying to just, treat them as holistically as possible, and just trying to help out in as many ways possible to reduce that burden on the household. In terms of reaching out and promoting the scheme, we've got several different avenues here, and we're trying direct mail outs. We're working through council communications, utilising local food banks to advertise the service, local community groups, online advertising through social media and those sorts of channels, and also through general flyer distribution. So I've struck through the last couple there. So we've got things like E.ON roadshows and workshops and events now. Again, due to COVID, these had to be postponed, but we're trying to sort of restart these sorts of promotional methods now that lockdown is sort of easing. So and we've also had to adapt and try to offer workshops and events remotely and things to try and engage with people, engage with households whilst we can't actually go out and visit them or get them along to a roadshow. It's been challenging, but it's been fun and interesting. So in summary, the Warm Homes Hub is a city and county-wide scheme aiming to deliver Category 1 and Category 3 support to vulnerable households. And some of the key services there that we offer, first and central heating and/or insulation, with the gas connections if need be. And then the secondary measures, again, things like benefit checks, utility bills, discounts, and health and well-being support, and also eventually home visits and more in-depth help in front of people's homes. That's it from me. It was sort of a whiz through there of what the service is and what we're hoping to achieve with it. So happy to take any questions, and I've got my contact details there if you need to get in touch with me or the scheme. We've got the website there if you want to take a look. In fact, actually, very quickly, I will just show you the website so you can take a look at it in its all its glory. What have we got there? Share. There we go. So yeah, this is where people will jump to if they follow the website, the link, and you've got a landing page here where you can get advice, you can get COVID support, you can go through to the central heating section. And so you can apply, for any of these services if that's what you need. You can click on those links, and they will take you through to referrals. Referrals pages. I think we've got one here, something like this, where you can just apply. Really simple online form. Pop your details in, few basic details, and then away you go. Okay, I think that's it from me. So again, any questions? I'll be happy to take them. There we go. Just share finally. There we go. Brilliant. Thanks.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much for that, Mark. There's some really interesting work going on across Nottingham and Nottinghamshire. It's great to know there's that support there, especially for getting people off solid fuel. I'm sort of based up here in northeast Derbyshire, so get a lot of referrals in this neck of the woods for people who are still on coal. Yeah. And I'm sort of sitting in Ashfield as well. So yeah, it's great to know that there is extra support there for those people, and it can be a real
I would
challenge.
say that the coal clients is a bit tricky, and we're trying to find ways to help those clients. And so we would always say, come through to us anyway, and we'll see what we can do. But you're right, it's amazing how many sort of fringe cases there are, and systems that aren't quite as conventional, or need to be managed on a case-by-case basis.
It can be a challenge as well, because I find that there's a lot of people that have free coal, and trying to convince them to then start paying for a heating system is quite a tricky thing to do, even though it's better for their health and obviously better for their property as well. It's quite difficult to say, well, actually, we want you to start paying for it. So yeah, so, but no, it's a fantastic suite of support available. So does anybody actually have any questions?
Well, I've seen a couple. I'm watching the chat. How many in our team? So there's there's about 10 of us in the office, but we work on various different projects. We've got one lady in particular who is responsible for most of the Warm Homes Hub referrals, but we've got at least 4 or 5 other staff who can help with those referrals and help progress those cases. So we inevitably help with lots of different services in the end, so we have to manage that as we can. It's not a massive team, but it's it's certainly workable.
We've got a question from Jane earlier. Are you exploring renewables? Heat pumps?
Not at present. Well, we're trying to explore renewables. We haven't got the scope for it at the moment, but it's something we're always looking into. And if we can offer that in the future, we're keeping our eyes on some of these new schemes that have been, talked about recently, and always looking for additional, funding options that may allow us to promote and install things like heat pumps. I totally agree. We should be moving that way anyway, but it's the political landscape for it isn't necessarily ideal at the moment.
Any other questions? Just put your hand up, unmute yourself, just throw yourself in the conversation. Yeah.
Just a question on we've been doing a survey with our tenants in regards to those who get capped through when they and it's getting uncapped. And a lot of the tenants we come across who are being capped, they get capped because they can't afford the gas, so they're only using electricity. So how are you dealing with the tenants who self-capping themselves?
I can't answer that question off the top of my head. I can certainly find out for you, because it's E.ON who work with Cadent to get those gas connections set up in the first place. They would probably be the ones to talk to in regards to how we deal with those clients who are self-capping. Are you saying they have a gas connection installed and then at a later date can't afford it, and so they self-cap?
Yeah, I mean, most of them have meters fitted. So when the engineers go out to do a check every year, if there's no gas supply, in other words, if they haven't topped up their meter, then what the engineers do, they cap it.
Right.
Because they can't afford the gas.
Right, okay. I can certainly find out for you, and if you just ping me your email, I can certainly get you an answer for that one. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head though.
Yeah, I've come across residents like that, and it can be a real challenge, because you need to get usually a gas safety check to get it reconnected, and the coordination between getting the supplier to reconnect it and getting the safety engineer to come out has been, it can be a real challenge. And if they're in debt as well, then you have to get credit on the meter, because otherwise they won't go anywhere near it. So
okay, thank you. That's a very good question. Thank you.
Do you come across many of those sort of cases then? Sorry, I don't know what your name is. You're just down as Galaxy J6.
Oh right, it's Gary. I work at EMH Homes.
Oh right, okay. Do you come across many people that are doing that then, Gary?
Well, yeah, during the lockdown, what we've been doing, we've actually been targeting all the accounts that have been capped and find out the reason why people are getting capped. And quite often that I come across at the moment is the reason why they're getting capped is because it's between heat or eat, is what it boils down to. And 9 times out of 10, they prefer to eat rather than heat.
It's a choice to make this time of year, isn't it, when it's not freezing cold.
And I would say that the intention of the project is to provide support around disconnecting them, is to provide that additional insulation to keep that heat in, and to keep the provide those utility bill discounts if necessary, and benefits checks, so that they don't have to make that decision once they've got this new gas central heating. But you're right, it's a good question. I don't yet know how we sort of follow up on that and ensure that doesn't happen with clients that we help connect. So thank you.
Any other questions? Anybody else want to chip in? No?
Just a comment, Helen. Can you hear me okay?
Oh,
Hi.
Is it Helen?
It is, yeah. Can you hear me okay?
I can just about hear you, yeah.
Just a comment about the people getting coal allowances. You may be aware that the coal authority generally will buy out the allowance. They're actually importing coal because we don't produce enough. So it's quite an expensive thing for coal authority to offer fuel allowances.
Right.
You absolutely must contact the coal authority before you install any other form of heating, and generally they will buy the allowance out.
Okay, well that's good to know.
You say in any case where someone switches to another heating form, we should think about contacting the coal authority. Is that right?
Before switching, if you switch the person, they automatically lose the allowance.
Oh, right. Okay.
Contact the coal authority or CISWO, which is their industry. It's Coal Industry Social Welfare Organisation based in Mansfield.
Right.
They generally look favourably, particularly if it's somebody with health-related issues, and they will offer to buy the coal allowance out, which generally pays for the gas central heating running costs. But yeah,
wow, okay.
Beforehand.
That's fantastic. I didn't realise that, Helen. That's good to know.
Okay.
If you've got a website, you could ping me a link to that. That'd be fantastic, and I can take another look and ask.
I will do, yeah.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Okay, if we'll wrap up there. Thanks again, Mark, for that. I'm sure if anybody's got any other questions, then are you happy for them to contact you?
Yeah, sure. There's one question there. Sorry, before I go, what is the project experience of take-up tariff switching? Yeah, I mean it's not massively high, but we do find people interested in tariff switching, and so we're trying to promote that wherever we can. But I think we are encountering more and more people nowadays who have already done it, or they've already got a relative that does it for them, or they are savvy enough to be able to go onto these comparison sites themselves. So more and more people are doing it themselves, which I guess is a good thing overall. If they don't need our help, that's better than if they just don't want it. So yeah.
Fantastic. So we'll wrap that up. Change to the agenda. We're now going to do a bit of a round table, give you guys a chance to sort of do a quick shout about what you're doing, who you are. So I think probably the easiest thing is if I just kind of go across my screen and pick somebody, unless anybody wants to throw themselves into the mix first. No, all right, I'll pick on people then. Milo, let's unmute you, hang on.
Yeah, I managed to do that as well. Right, I am a technical officer for Leicester City Council. Lucy Birch works with me, or actually I work with her, we work together. We have a few schemes from Leicester City that aim at boiler replacement, installation and so on. We actually have a warm home fund set up for first-time central heating and gas connections, similar to Derby and the county and so on. Unfortunately, at the moment with the COVID situation in Leicester, we were supposed to start in February, March. So everything is not on hold because we've done lots of work in the background. But the bottom line is that we've not been allowed to visit anybody. We still are not visiting anybody. In the meanwhile, one of the schemes that we used to run from Leicester, which was Health Through Warm, which was funded by by Empower. As Empower has been bought out by E.ON, that particular scheme was cancelled, and we have managed to replace it with Leicester Warm and Healthy Homes. So again, it's a matter of helping people with boiler replacement, first-time central heatings, but it's more focused on the health rather than just the fuel poverty and so on. It is more health, and indeed the NHS and so on provide a little bit of funds. And we keep busy that way as much as we can. So I had a couple of emails coming through with a referral, so it's quite good.
How are you sort of dealing with things during localised lockdown? That's still going on in Leicester, isn't it?
Yes, the funny thing is that the Leicester City Council has decided that we're not allowed to do site visits yet. So I have found myself that the contractor can. So quite a few instances I've asked the contractors to visit, and then they switch on Skype on the telephone and we do things via Skype with the client. You've got to be a bit inventive, but it seems to be working. For example, today, because we cannot even receive the post or send out application forms, I'm going to call a client and I will fill the application form while on the telephone with them, and we'll take it from there. It will be a telephone visit rather than a personal visit. It's not ideal by any means, but
we're all finding ways around it, aren't we?
There is a way. If there is a will, there is a way.
Fantastic. Thank you for that, Milo. Okay, I'll go down and I will go to Kendall. There we go.
All right. I'm Kendall Hodder. I'm an energy efficiency officer at Derby Homes, alongside my colleague Nar Sam, who's also listening today. We manage Derby City Council's housing stock, so about 13,000 properties. Just the two of us. We get involved in all sorts of things, normally face-to-face visits with our tenants, but obviously, you know, at the moment we've not been able to do that. And fortunately, we've not had sort of too many queries whilst we've been in lockdown because the weather's been so good. So that's really helped. Had it been winter, it would have been a totally different story. We were due just before lockdown. We were working alongside Bays. Derby was chosen as the pilot city for smart meter rollout. Sort of major project that we're going to be doing over about 2 months, but not really sure whether that's going to go ahead.
Didn't quite go to plan, did it, Kendall?
No, it didn't. It didn't. Lots of organising as well before that, but no, didn't quite happen.
I think just a quick update on that. I've had an email to say that it should be, they are starting to roll them out again, so the pilot should be picked up a little bit later this year.
Well, hopefully. I mean, we'll see. I mean, that's been our problem with our sort of, we've been helping a lot with our voids teams whilst we've been in lockdown, because we normally use RAM Energy for our voids, and they've not been able to take on any meter swaps or anything during lockdown. So spent a lot of time actually trying to contact existing utility companies when we've had voids come in, and that's been fun, doing that by email, because they're not the easiest to contact, even by phone. So that's been, well, I won't even go into how that's been really, but it's gradually improving. But whilst we've been in lockdown, we've been doing quite a few of the NEA online training courses as well. You know, that's been really useful, and we've been rolling that out to a lot of our tenancy sustainment teams and things like that. And really, we've just been sort of trying to sort of keep going and keep up to date with various projects that we want to go ahead with in the future. So it's given us a little bit of time to get sort of paperwork side sort of things done, and trying to work out what we want to do. But yeah, once we're up and running again, I mean, we really want to get going and get speaking to our tenants again. We did a project just over a year ago where we installed air source heat pumps into a block of flats. I mean, we know so far that's been really good. It was replacing storage heaters, and that's made a massive difference to our tenants. People again who were not having the heating on at all when it was storage heaters, and now they're finding they can afford to do that. So we're putting air source heat pumps in quite a few new builds that we're doing as well at the moment. And that's probably it really for the moment, because as I say, you know, with shutdown, lockdown, we've not been able to do what we normally do, but it'd be good once we can get up and running again.
Fantastic, thank you for that, Kendall. We'll go to Helen Chadwick.
Hi, yeah, so we've been working on our energy efficiency scheme with a local community energy group called Harbour Energy. We've been doing that, this is our 3rd year with them now, or maybe even 4th year. And they've been able to restart and start, they do letter drops and then go back round. So we've started to get a few installations coming through from that. And we're also involved in the Leicestershire scheme for first time central heating, which is very similar to the NEP scheme. And again, that's just starting now. They've sort of mapped out the areas that they're going to be looking at. The website's up and running, and they've chosen some sites. So hopefully some sites in Harbour are going to come forward in the next, they'll start sending letters out next month. But I think they're concentrating on Melton first. So yeah, that's the main things. And then it's just looking at the new stuff that's coming out from the government and seeing what we can do there. But particularly around trying to encourage more renewables, I think. But that's going to be tricky. But yeah, that's us.
It sounds like there's a fantastic support right across the East Midlands. Lots of different things going on. It's great to know there is all that support for people, which is brilliant. Peter, I'm going to pick on you. Can you give us an update from MEA?
Oh yes, yes. I work for March's Energy Agency. We run a sort of fairly similar scheme to the NEP in Derbyshire and Derby. So we've got a phone line, support line. where people can pick up sort of basic advice on bills and switching and referrals onwards through that. We would ordinarily be doing home visits, and I'm not going to go into through all that again, but so basically I'm working at home posting out. I can show you our little collection of light bulbs down there. Look, see any of those? I'm posting out regularly to people. We're sending out, we've got a crisis fund that we've managed to put to one side to help with some small measures. Seat warmers have been going out, like hot cross buns, really.
Seat warmers?
Seat warmers, yeah, they've been really popular. So we've come across a lot of people being referred in, perhaps with health problems, and maybe in a cold home, and the health problems, they've just come out of hospital or something. It's quite an affordable way of an individual staying warm in the house, is to have the little seat warmer.
They're a bit like the hand warmers. They're like the hand warmers, only bigger.
Yeah, they drape over the seat and they warm up. They cost apparently about half a penny an hour to run. So they've been quite popular. But yeah, essentially we're supported by the city council and the county council to run the service, and providing all the usual things, really, the debt advice, the bills advice, switching, referrals on to citizens advice if necessary, links into the county council's healthy homes team, city council's team in Derby. Been running about a year and a half, due to refresh that hopefully with a successful bid to energy redress soon. We don't quite know exactly how that's going to look, but we're looking to sort of broaden the service out a little bit, perhaps. So taking referrals by, we have an online, if anybody has a client that you think would be within the county or the city, that we can help them, then that would be great. Another thing we have is we've got a short-term fund to provide prepayment top-ups at the moment, which is running till the middle of August. We don't know what happens after that, but at the moment we've got something like 400 of these vouchers to give away, as it were. Obviously, there's a certain level of trust involved, but if it's coming through a referral partner, we're more than likely we'll accept that referrer's sort of word that person is in need, and can quite quickly get a fuel voucher out to people via text or email, and that's been really good, actually. That's helped a lot of people the last few weeks.
Great, thank you very much for that, Pete. Who should we go to next? Jane Elliott. I don't think I've seen you at our forums before, from Switchy. You want to just tell us who you are and what you've been up to?
Hi Helen, thank you for letting me join today. Really interesting. I work for Switchy, which we produce a smart thermostat for social housing, which combines with sensor data information for the landlords to be able to help monitor how the property is performing. Interestingly, a couple of my customers in the region are Dudley, NBC and Futures. I don't think they're represented today. Dudley, during lockdown, from an energy point of view, used the Switchy device, which goes onto the wall as a smart heating control. And the lady that was sat in the draft, you need to move your thermostat. So yeah, Nikki, you need to get that thermostat moved. So yeah, they use it can send and receive messages. I've got mine. I've not got no messages, but if you can see my screen, something like that. And they used that to actually ask if they wanted any a phone call to try and give them some energy advice. And they received over 107 requests for advice. So 25% of the campaign just requested for advice. So that meant that they could actually target those calls. So anybody's looking at campaign activity, trying to understand where you actually would be able to campaign. Now, the downside of that, obviously, you'd have to have a switchy installed in the first place, but because we've got eco-funding status, if you're doing any improvement measures, you could actually include that and get some funding back towards it for the band D or below, because it's an innovation status as well. So there's a bit of a plug there for switchy, but interestingly, I can get Helen Langley's contact details if anybody's interested about what the outcomes of that, because we've just had a draft report from them. I've got a conversation with them on Thursday, and that's really interesting in terms of how they're actually using it in a different, innovative way, and they're using the data to actually understand how the properties are performing to actually target those customers as well, be it from nudging them down when they're actually using the heating at higher temperature to the ones that are actually at risk of fuel poverty because they're not heating it at a minimum NHS temperature. So that's me, but yeah, happy to talk to anybody. I'll put my contact details in the message.
Fantastic, thanks for that, Jane. It's always good to know about the some of the supporting technology that's out there that obviously will enable us to maximise the measures that we're putting into properties, and obviously making sure that people are using it correctly. That's always a challenge. You can fit, a new heating system and a fantastic thermostat, but if people are still going back to, traditional habits and old patterns of behaviour, then it's quite a challenge to sometimes for them to see the full benefits of what they can do. So it's fantastic to hear about some of that technology. So I'm sure if people have got questions, they can get in touch with you. If we've got, there you go, fantastic. So if in the chat we've got your email address, so that's brilliant. Does anybody else want to do an update? I don't want to pick on anybody else. We're running a little bit short on time. Oh, Louise. Hi, Louise.
Hiya, sorry, I just unmuted myself. I've had a few technical difficulties this morning, so sorry you've had to keep letting me back in the meeting every time it crashed and I had to rejoin. I know a lot of you will probably have met my colleague Russell Basanko in the past, so I'm from Derbyshire District Citizens Advice, and thanks for letting me join as well. Debt advice has been pretty quiet since the government introduced all the measures, so we've been focusing on doing training. Part of that we've been doing the fuel poverty training and trying to get the advisors up to speed, and we all know there's going to be an influx of debt advice needed after this, so we're just trying to get prepared. We're working very closely with local authorities to try and put in place. We've got a subgroup just looking at financial support after COVID and what we can do, and part of that is around fuel poverty. So this meeting is just really timely for me, and it's great to get involved, but there is a lot of work going on around people that are struggling and trying to identify the families that are not currently coming forward because of all the measures that have been put in place. I think it's a bit out of sight, out of mind at the minute for a lot of people because they're not being chased. So it's really important for us to try and get out there and get those people and get the message across that they do need to speak to people and get help. Because I just think there's going to be a tidal wave of issues coming after all this. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Oh, fantastic. It was good to meet you, Louise. Have you taken over from Russell then, or are you sort of within the same team?
I manage the debt team. So obviously in the past, Russell has updated the whole organisation when he's attended meetings and he's given feedback and kept us all up to speed. He's on his way to Bulgaria very shortly. So we do have another energy advisor, energy champion in place, but he wasn't able to attend today. So I mean, I'm always happy to be involved in these because they keep our money advisors up to speed with everything that's happening in the world of fuel anyway. So it's really important for us to be involved.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, it's great to have you along, Louise. Just on the back of that, I should have mentioned at the beginning, NEA is offering a load of training at the moment. Our training guys have worked really hard to shift from obviously front-facing training onto online. We now have a set of training webinars, which are sort of mini training courses. We have fuel poverty and health, vulnerability in the energy market, and fuel debt advice in the community. All of these are through our website, so just go on to the NEA training page of our website. We also have our traditional training courses. They're all down as e-learning now. And we have our level 3 City and Guilds award in energy awareness. we have fuel poverty and health, and the introduction to domestic energy efficiency as well. So the training is still there. It's all done virtually now, which I'm sure our trainers really appreciate, rather than having to go from one end of the country to the other. So that's all on our website. So if you are interested, you can obviously go along and have a look. Just thought I'd mention that, obviously, as Louise mentioned, training and a little update there. So that's great. Anybody else want to do a quick update, or happy to move on? I can see lots of people have taken their video off, so I'm assuming that they don't want to. They don't want to speak.
I can give you a quick update for Bassett Law. Yeah, so basically, with the MEES regulations being in full force now, as the Environmental Health Housing Standards team, what we've done, working with our housing strategy, we've basically data cleansed all our private rented stock to identify all those properties that are of a F or G rating on the energy performance. So we're now actively targeting those landlords and sending letters out for them and expecting them to meet the minimum standards within a period of time, and failure to do so will be enforcing against that. But we will be trying to assist them with some of the schemes, the eco schemes, which our housing strategy are leading on. So we've got Terry Rell, who's working with the Warm Homes Hub, and they've still got a little bit of funding in through the Warm Homes on Prescription scheme that they're helping. And we've also got E.ON doing a project in relation to supplying gas to the areas within our district that have no gas at present. So yeah, they've got quite a bit going on. So that's Bassett Law for you.
Just unmuting myself. Helen, did you want to give an update on the Warm Homes on Prescription scheme? If you're still there. Whether she's still there. I think we might have lost. Oh, hang on. Let's try and unmute her. Are you there, Helen? Or Alan?
I'm here.
Yeah. Just wondered whether you wanted to give an update on the Warm Homes on Prescription.
Yes, we are. It's still running, but like others, we're not doing face-to-face visits. We have tried to do some information gathering over the telephone, but it's quite challenging with the nature of the clients that we're dealing with. So it is still running. We are working with Mansfield District Council because we have got to go through a new procurement exercise because our contract's coming to an end in terms of getting heating installed. So we're doing that, using the time we've got to go through a procurement exercise. But yeah, Warm Homes on Prescription continues as normal. We are working obviously with, we're working with Vinshires at the moment, so they're doing safe systems of work to enable us to start the scheme again as soon as it's safe to do so. We're also heavily involved in the E.ON, excuse me, first time central heating scheme, obviously involving NEP, which Mark talked about. We've also got a park home scheme running, which all the gas connections have been put in, 44 park homes in Ollerton, but unfortunately, again, everything's come to a halt in terms of the surveys and the heating systems, but hoping to get that restarted shortly too. That's sort of a quick update.
Oh, fantastic. It's great that it's all sort of going ahead.
Yeah.
It should be anyway. I think there's going to be a massive flurry of work in the next couple of months now. But no, that's great. Thanks for that, Helen. Okay, so we'll move on. A little bit behind, but we're going to go for just trying to think of the best way to do this, whether you want to have a sort of 5-minute break or whether we put people into the breakout rooms, Nina, and people can grab a cuppa while they're in there.
Yeah, Helen, I've made you the host, so you can go ahead with you will have the breakout option on your bottom screen. And looking at us, we have 26, 27 people in. So if you want to make either 4 groups or something like that, might be about right.
Okie dokie. What I'll do, just bear with me 1 second. I have some questions which I will put in the chat. 1 second. If I put it in the chat, then everybody's got it. If you just want to have a chat amongst yourselves, have a go at one or all three of the questions, your feedback is fantastic for us, just on how you've been coping under COVID, how your working practices have changed, and then we'll sort of pick one person from each, or you can decide one person from each group just to give some quick feedback on those questions. So if I just pop that in the chat. There you go. There you go. How has your organisation coped during the COVID-19 crisis, and what has been the impact? What have you learned, the good, the bad and the ugly? Any best practice that you might be able to share with the other people in the group? And how can NEA help and assist you further at this time? So if you want to have a stab at those, I will attempt to put you into breakout groups. So just bear with me a second. Okay. Does anybody want to feedback from any of their breakout groups?
I can kick off from ours if you like.
Yeah, that'd be great, thanks.
So people had sort of varying experiences of the last few months. So some people had some staff on furlough who have recently returned. People felt that that kind of working out what all of this means for us and how we continue. Certainly at the beginning took up quite a lot of mental energy for a lot of people. I'm sure there's people who will kind of nod along with that. It was you know, a bit of a curveball. It took a while to figure out how to respond and what to do. People who are operating a referral program felt that the referrals had dried up quite significantly, which has been mentioned already today, and that is picking up again now, but not necessarily back up to the sort of full volumes, and it's difficult to know how much of that is COVID related and how much is summer related. Some people obviously have been working from home. Some are beginning now to go back into office environments, but kind of cautiously so. But obviously there's been a total lack of any kind of home visit going on, so lots and lots of work going on via phone and email. Although one of our members was beginning to do home visits again, where that was acceptable to the homeowner or the occupier. So beginning to make a kind of the first steps back into normal delivery. In terms of things that people had learnt, people mentioned Zoom as being a kind of new skill that we can all add to our arsenal, and there's been lots of three-way phone calls going on between clients and suppliers as well to try and facilitate solutions. In terms of things that people have found that it had been quite difficult to contact energy suppliers in general. Lots of them were kind of only dealing with you if you were an emergency case, and as we said, you know, it's quite difficult to define what an emergency is and who defines that. And in terms of things that people had found useful from NEA, people thankfully found the forums useful, so glad that that's the case. Also the online training, both the e-learning and the webinars, people have been prioritising those things in the absence of being able to do other stuff, so people were finding those kind of things useful. So yeah, I think that's about it really from our group.
Fantastic, thank you for that, Nikki. I'm sure there's a lot of information there, a lot of comments that other people are sounding familiar. Let's see who else. Kendall, I know that you were assigned scribe for your group. Any feedback?
Yeah, but similar, but I think we went off piste a little bit and got talking about tariffs, and the main thing, you know, apart from like what Nikki was on about, which they seem to talk about a lot in their group, a lot more probably than we did, was really the fact that we've, in some ways it's been lucky that it's been the time of year it's been, as far as there's been winter, and if we get a second sort of wave, you know, winter could be bad from the point of view of people not really having a lot of income to pay for their utilities. We talked as well about lots of people being on universal credit and again choosing between either eating or heating. We didn't get onto a lot of other things actually. The time went really fast. So, but you know, I mean, I sort of spoke earlier in the meeting, didn't I? So similar sort of things really. But it's been useful to well, we didn't discuss this in our meeting now, but I agree with what Nikki said. It's been really, really useful to have all the NEA sort of training and webinars and things, and it's been really useful passing it out to our other teams within where I work. So whilst they're at home, they've got time to actually do all this, whereas sometimes they've not got the time. And I've got
I think it's just freed people up as well, because if you've got teams of people, it's quite difficult from a business point of view to let everybody travel to, you know, a different part of the country to go and do training, whereas now you can, you know, all of your staff can do it theoretically. So I
think one of the biggest problems is because some people use Zoom, some people use Microsoft Teams, we use Skype for Business, and for some people, if they're not too computer savvy, which I'm about halfway.
I've put my hand up to that one.
It's getting set up like today. I'm on my own laptop because I couldn't get in on my works one.
No, it's there's definitely been some challenges, but I think it's fantastic. Just everybody seems to have, you know,
it's just muddling through.
Yeah, and you know, the people that we're supporting, I think, are just grateful that the help is there, no matter how we're delivering it, whether it's face to face or over the phone.
Exactly.
You know, the fact that we can be flexible now, I think, is going to carry on. I think it's changed how we work, but especially things like the forum. I mean, it's fantastic. You know, if you're, you know, in the deepest, darkest depths of Lincolnshire, then it's a long way to travel down to Nottingham or Leicester to come to a forum. So this opens it up for a whole host of different people as well. So I appreciate everybody coming along to this. It's been great. Is anybody from any of the other breakout groups?
Yeah, I was taking some notes in our group, Helen. We were group 3, room 3. So we talked about very similar things as well. We didn't really get through all the questions. We just mainly spoke about our own sort of experiences during this time. So first of all, with Lincolnshire County Council, they were really not expecting to return to the office work environment at all until after Christmas, which is an interesting one that we had kind of talked about at NEA as well. We sort of joked about the fact that we might be putting up the Christmas tree the next time we see each other. And that's sort of is coming to be the truth in certain places. So they've used this time anyway, whilst there's been no home visits and no contractors being able to go in, to get some education done. So for example, doing the NEA qualification, 6281, the Sitting Guilds, they've been doing putting agreements in place and making referrals to put in place for when we can open up a little bit more, but they're very much expecting a second wave in winter. And as we said, being locked down in summer is a whole different ballgame to people having to spend time at home in winter when it's really cold and they might not be living in adequate housing in the first place. So it's going to be a very difficult situation. Also talked about the fact that in Citizens Advice, they might be starting to do some face-to-face contact in September, but that will be at the very earliest. And during this time, the debt advice service has fallen off a cliff. But the reasoning for that might be that there is an economic delay as well, so that people that will be losing their jobs due to COVID and the related issues, they might not be seeing this until a little bit further down the line, and people then don't come until they're in dire straits, and they, you know, if they have a little bit of savings, they might use that first. So it will take longer until you see that actually happening in you know, face to face. They've also had a big shift in the client group, a lot of younger people coming along, so that's been useful, so they could use web chats and things like this to talk to clients, and a lot of people that might not be so confident just calling up or coming in face to face, for them it's good to use a completely new way of interacting. And also updating lots of web services to help provide support. This was across the board to make sure that they could get in touch and talk to people and keep up that contact with the vulnerable people. And then Milo had some views on how Leicestershire County Council has been slow to get the correct agreements in place so that they could start working the way they would like to be working. But flexible working, which never really been allowed, has now become the norm. So from being quite rigid, they've gone to being very flexible, and there's a lot of positives around that as well. Now, that was me trying to take as many notes as quickly as possible. So if any of you would like to come in and say, no, you got that completely wrong, please do. But otherwise, that was sort of some of the basics that we got through during our session.
I think we're still missing one group, I think. Does anybody else want to chip in from any other groups? Any other comments? No? No? Has anybody got any questions from either from that session or from anything else that we've gone through today? No, we've had lots of questions in the chat groups, which have been brilliant. Has anybody else got anything they want to chip in? If not, we will wrap this up. So
Could I just say, Helen, I can read the questions, but I can't seem to answer. A couple of people have asked me, Helen Richmond, for some information, but
right.
I can't respond. I don't quite know why, whether it's because I'm on my husband's computer and it's not letting me respond. So Mark, I'll send you some information. I can see your request, I just can't reply to you.
Thank you.
And somebody else has asked for something. Jane Elliott, so I'll try and reply to you separately. I'm from Newark and Sherwood District Council, that's what you're asking. But okay, sorry.
Well, the wonders of technology, it's great when it works, but you can't go wrong with a pen and paper, can you, sometimes? No, if that's it. If nobody has any other questions, then I will thank everybody for coming. It's been great. Thank you for being so supportive of my first forum, my first virtual forum as well at that. So that's brilliant. Thank you very much. Like I said, we'll send out the slides. There'll be loads of information in there, as well as links and contact details. So if you have any other questions, then obviously come back to us and we will do our best to answer them. That's it. I'll let you go. I'll let you go and have your lunch. Nice to meet you all.
Really interesting.
Bye.
Thanks, Helen.